Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we are here, I suppose you might say, in a sort of a conspiracy. We really should be seriously conspiring here against all the evil that's in the world. And so, inasmuch as we have such deadly designs on the world's evils, we ought to make sure, before we see the end of this week, that whatever questions remain with us are brought to the surface, because very seriously we are engaged in a world work. Every time that a simple cold is healed or flu, we have demonstrated that there is a power on earth that the world knows not of. The only power that the world recognizes is force. A lady sent me yesterday an editorial from a newspaper in Australia, commenting on this spiritual healing thing that's going on in Holland with the Queen. And this very wise newspaper editor with a tremendous following says he wonders how many centuries must go on and people believe in all of this nonsense as if there were anything but just force. Why, how can an educated queen believe in such things as spiritual things? Just impossible for an educated person to believe in. Now that's really much of the attitude of the world, because even though there are less public editorials like that, there are just as many editors believing that, with not quite the courage to say it, because there are more orthodox churches acknowledging that there must be something to it, and so editors are becoming a little more careful of their reading public. But they haven't changed their spots, nor their convictions. And so it is that you very little realize how few people there are in the world who have accepted that there are any other powers in the world except medicines or bullets or bombs. How very few people have accepted that there are invisible powers, what the Master called angels, that could bear me up. But there are angels. There are invisible presences. If you like, you can call it a presence. It makes no difference, because it's only one presence, just as we are only one presence in this room, although with the seeing of the eye you would call us presences. But we're only one. There's only one life in this room. There's only one intelligence. There's only one love. It can be 1,000 times expressed, but it's still the one. And so we may say there is only one angel, or we can say there are angels. We can say there are presences, or there is only one presence. But what I am trying to convey to you is that there is an invisible something. Call it even and intangible, since it is not known to human senses. It can't be seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelt. And yet it exists. Yet it exists in this room. Yet it exists in your individual consciousness and mind. This something that the world as a whole does not even acknowledge. The world doesn't acknowledge it, but we are claiming intimate acquaintanceship with it. We are claiming conscious oneness with it. We are claiming an understanding of its operation. But you see, we can only claim that in proportion to our demonstration of it, not any more. It certainly is true that there is an infinite God. It is certainly true that we are far from demonstrating an infinity of good. And yet we are the only people in the world, those on the metaphysical, spiritual path, who even acknowledge there is such a thing. But you see, part of the world's inability to accept us is our inability to demonstrate much of it. If only we could show forth more to the world in our personal lives and in the lives of our patients and our students, then we would be more readily accepted in the world. Now, of the recognized movements, metaphysical movements of the world, the only one so far to gain any worldwide recognition is the Christian Science movement. That has gained absolute recognition in all countries on the globe. It is legalized. And not only legalized, but recognized for what it has accomplished. But that is only a beginning. That is only a beginning. A very small beginning, because even the Christian scientists today are not doing those works of which they are capable. That is said with all due credit for the fact that, so far as my experience goes, they are doing the best of any of the metaphysical works on earth today. There's nobody going beyond them at the present time. And yet, it isn't even near what they are capable of, and it doesn't even begin to approach what we are capable of once we begin to understand what this invisible is with which we are dealing. Now, we have even a greater possibility than they, because we have no human allegiances. We have no human ties. We have no human loyalties. We are set free to make our spiritual contact without limitation and without comment and without criticism among ourselves. In other words, if our students were every one of them to have a revelation, an unfoldment of God, no one in this whole activity of the infinite way would presume to say it didn't happen. In other words, it is opened out not as a possibility merely for the leader, but for every single individual who opens themselves to God. Secondly, there is no limit to what an individual can accomplish except the limit of their own capacity to find their conscious union with God. They're not limited by an organization. They're not told what position to occupy or not occupy. They're not given a title or limited to a title. They are absolutely, in the infinite way, our students are absolutely free in Christ to make whatever demonstration their state of consciousness will embody and include. So you see that for us, there are absolutely no limits whatsoever. None. And the degree of our unfoldment is the degree of our individual capacity to unfold in God. And no one can set a limit on that but the individual themselves. And the limit they set is the time, the attention, the devotion that they give to spiritual development. Now, it was brought out last night at the lesson that the only way to develop spiritually is in the degree that we keep our thought stayed on God, in the degree that we acknowledge God in all our ways, in the degree that we pray without ceasing, in the degree that we meditate and make inner contact, in the degree that we refuse to accept appearances at face value and not put on them labels of good or evil. So you see that the limitation, if there is to be one in our demonstration, is a limitation which we are going to place upon ourselves, not one which the infinite way will place on anyone. Now, if there is a question this morning in your mind, something that has stood out to you in these last few days that requires clarification in your thought, don't hesitate this morning to ask that question. Just raise your hand and ask it. And let us accept the fact that we are here in this room for the purpose of bringing to light anything or everything that will help us to function on a higher spiritual plane.
If, when treating a patient, the patient passes over, is that our lack of demonstration, or is that the Father's will?
Passing on is never the Father's will. That is, in the sense of passing on from disease. There is a time, thank you for that question, it is a wonderful one. There is a time when each one of us will pass from the human scene. That is part of our spiritual progression. God never meant that we should be born and stay babies. And therefore, in the natural course of spiritual evolution, we became children. But as delightful as childhood days might be, God never intended that we stay children forever. And so in the normal, natural, spiritual evolution, we became adults and we became parents. But, and I'm sure grandmothers are not going to agree with me on this, God did not intend that we should forever be parents, or even vicarious parents called grandparents, but that we should progress spiritually above parenthood into the next state of spiritual unfoldment. And it is for that reason that the power to bear children is taken from us. Because just as it was given to us as part of our development and unfoldment, so it is taken from us as a continuing experience of spiritual development and unfoldment, so that we can stop that particular period of our experience and go on to something higher and better. Now, those people who have not fought against not being parents again or grandparents again, but have been willing to open themselves to spiritual development, have found that there is a life in the late middle years, which begins in the late middle years, which far transcends in beauty anything that they ever knew as a child or as a parent. It is a state of spiritual development of which the human mind cannot even grasp. There are faculties developed that human beings never even know, don't even know exist. There are spiritual delights which the human mind could never even encompass with all that it thinks it knows of pleasures. There are visions of man's transcendental nature which it is almost impossible to accept until it is experienced. Now then, as we progress from one state of spiritual development to another, just as our bodies have changed from infancy to childhood, childhood to puberty, and through childbearing days, and right on through menopause and the stopping of that particular function, so it continues to progress, the body I'm talking about, in ever freer, newer sensations, vitalities, joys, and in the natural course of events will pass from visible sight, as did the Master at the Ascension. Now, the experience of the Master was primarily a change of inner consciousness, an ascending consciousness, until it ascended so high that it disappeared from human view. And so the day will come when that will happen to us. Now, whether or not it takes place as it did with Elijah in seemingly mounting up on a cloud and disappearing from sight, leaving only a cloak behind, or whether it takes place as an ascension of the soul and may leave a body somewhere in a tomb, that is of relatively little importance. For this reason, you have all trimmed your fingernails and your toenails. And now, if you'll think of it, ask yourself where they are now, and you don't know and you little care, probably in a furnace somewhere. You've all had your hair trimmed, and you can't remember now where that hair is or what's become of it, probably been burned up in a furnace. But you don't care. And the reason is that these nails and this hair is not a part of you and never was. It was only a part of your body. But you go right on forever, no matter what they do. In the same way, every day of our lives, our skin is sloughing off. you little know what happens to the skin of yesterday, except that it isn't here today. And so it will be that eventually we will let our whole body go, and it will be of no concern to us whether they threw it in a furnace or buried it in the ground or just threw it in the ocean, for the simple reason that it will not be a part of us as it really isn't. It is only a part of us as a utility, something to walk around in. But you can trim these nails, you can let this skin slough off, you can cut this hair. As a matter of fact, you can cut hands off or legs off or feet off or do anything you like, and I still go on. And so you will learn, as I have witnessed in the experience of several friends, that a day comes when you just turn around and say, I'm on my way, my time has come for higher unfoldment, and you walk out, and then your friends have a funeral service. But it's of no importance to you any more than if they held a funeral service over the hair that the barber cut off. Now, it is possible that we can transcend that and leave only a cloak. You remember Elijah's cloak? Elisha wanted to be the great spiritual leader that Elijah was, and spoke to him about it. But Elijah says, like every spiritual teacher has to say, I can't make you spiritual. That is something that takes place in your own consciousness. But if when I ascend you see my cloak, you see me rise out of sight, then my cloak will fall on you, and you will have the same consciousness that I had. And lo and behold, Elisha did witness Elijah rise up on a cloud, and the cloak did fall upon him. Well, now that cloak is just as symbolic as our body. Nobody's going to inherit our bodies, and nobody inherits our cloak, but they can inherit our state of consciousness if they apprehend our state of consciousness. Now, Peter apprehended the Master. Who do men say that I am? Oh, a Hebrew prophet resurrected. Whom do ye say that I am? And Peter says, I see you. Thou art the Christ. Yes, you see, Peter apprehended the nature of the Master, and thereby he was enabled to, you might say, wear the cloak of the Master. In other words, develop that same spiritual consciousness. All right, whether or not now we leave this scene by just saying, well, friends, my time is here, I'm leaving you goodbye, and then I walk out and you have the service, or whether I carry it on up with me is of no importance. The day is coming when I am going to disappear, and so are you, from visible sight. And it may be that in our present unfoldment and for the good of the world at large, it may even be a better thing that we leave a body for burial and not have the world running around looking for us, claiming our students faked something for a good purpose. Now, that covers the subject of a continuing, expanding, and ascending consciousness that ultimately disappears from human scene. But it does not account for death through disease. Death through disease most usually is the result of our individual failure to comprehend life, not necessarily the practitioner's failure. For this reason, nobody ever passes on without first giving their consent. No one. It's an impossibility. Everybody has to first, within themselves, give their consent, and they don't always do it so that you know it. Very few people want to tell you that they're ready to depart this earth, that they've had enough. But most people who do get ready for that stuff have had enough. They've either had enough of family burdens or misunderstandings, or they have enough of fearing lack or limitation, or they are beginning to feel the pull of an aged body and are a little bit weary dragging it around, or discouragement comes in because they're not making some other demonstration. But you will find that even if it's a child, they feel that their own time has come. I know of an 8-year-old child who was passing on from leukemia, and when its mother sat by it grieving, turned around and said, "Mother, please don't grieve. I finished my work on earth and I'm going home." That child, even at 8, had come to a conviction that its work was done, whatever it thought its work may have been, and it may have been so. Now, the point for us to remember is this, that as practitioners, it is up to us to be as consecrated and devoted as we can with every case that is entrusted to us, but not to feel a personal responsibility in the sense that we can stop everybody from passing on, because we can't. They have the decision in the final analysis within themselves as to whether or not they want to stand and fight or retreat into a shell that they will call passing on. And so it is that, and I'm speaking to you now from my personal experience, I approach every case as if it were given to me to save this patient, as if it were given me to keep this life here on earth. But in those experiences where that has not happened, then I have accepted it as being beyond my individual capacity to know more, and probably within the range of the patient's capacity to take themselves off. Now, there may possibly be times when a case that I'm losing, some other practitioner could pick up and win. That may be, and the only way we'd ever have of knowing that is if it actually happens, you see? And that is a question I doubt if any of us are ever going to satisfactorily answer. Certain it is that many cases the disciples couldn't heal and the Master did. Certain it is many cases many practitioners could not meet, and I have. And certain it is that there may have been those that I could not meet that had the right practitioner come along, they may have met, but I have no way of knowing that. I only know that in those cases where there was a passing, I had stood fast with the highest that I had, and beyond that I couldn't go. But never accept death as God's will, because that is going back into old theology again. Anything they can't understand, that must be God's will, you see? And if we take an attitude like that, we're just not going to save our patients, you see? God's will is life eternal. That must be our standpoint, you see? Then, since passing on isn't really death, if somebody here and there decides they do want to go on, well, they're going to start all over again anyhow. It's not really death, it's just another phase of life. And so it isn't any final tragedy. Is that clear? Accept the full responsibility for healing, but your experience will prove that you cannot save every case. And I've also seen this in the healing work. I had a secretary whose mother passed on in a stroke at 79 years of age. And the brother just happened to walk in about 5 minutes after his mother had passed on, and called my office, and in 25 minutes that mother was back on earth again. Now, that mother lived to be 85. But at no time in that 85 did she stop blaming me for her being on earth because she didn't want to be here, you see? And not only that, but she kept telling her daughter, I'll fool him one of these days. He won't let me go, but when he's away, I'll go. And when I moved to California, that woman passed on the very next week.
Did you deliberately bring her back, or did you just take your mind right off her and she just came back of her own?
Oh, yes, it was just a question of, no, it was just a question of treating it as I would any other case. I didn't think of it as life or death. To me, it was just a call for help. And as I contacted the spirit, that's the way it unfolded. Oh, no, I never try to heal anybody. My whole healing work is trying to make contact with God and then letting whatever happen, happen. You see, I make no, I have no thought about healing disease or saving life. I have only one thing when I'm called on for help. Can I make an inner contact with the Spirit? Can I feel that flow, that release? That's all. If I do, that's when healings take place. And I've seen them right at death's door and come right smack back and have wonderful healings. But it wasn't because I made an effort to save their life. It was made because I made the effort to maintain that contact. And that is the way the healing took place, do you see? Now, it is a strange thing. Yes?
About the little children who get born either stillborn or immediately after death, is that with their consent? A child before the year of age, is it just as conscious that
Oh yes, it's just, they are just as conscious throughout their period as if they were adults, because actually they're not infants. That's our side of it. But there are two ways of looking at that. One is that some of these cases may be the fault of ignorance of parents or materia medica. I mean, if you knew how many parents that are ignorant of everything about children except conception, you would know that it's a miracle that as many survive as do. And so it is that some of those are undoubtedly due to malnutrition, to neglect, to improper care during pregnancy. A lot of it is due to animality in the pregnancy. Some parents never rise above just animals, and their conduct during a pregnancy would be enough to destroy any tiny growth or infant of that kind. And so there may be as much fault sometimes humanly as there is with the child itself, because you must remember that our children and our animals are subject to our state of consciousness, not only to their own. In addition to whatever they have of their own, they are subject to ours. And that is why a child that is brought into this world with spiritually minded parents, parents who, let us say, are more in love than they're just physical animals, will have a higher type children than just the animal, and will have a higher type of development because they don't bring them up by bread alone, but by every word of God. You know, in one of the writings, Living the Infinite Way, where I brought out Alan Boone's story about the Arabian horses, that Arabian horses we recognize to be the best horses on the face of the earth. And we are told that in Arabia, while the mare is in foal, that a religious man goes out every single day and reads to it from the Koran, a certain amount of passages every day. Now, never doubt that that has an effect on that foal. In the same way that we have witnessed metaphysical parents, Christian Scientists, Unity, Infinite Way, who throughout their pregnancy are really talking to their children and telling it the truth of God and reading Scripture to it and reading truth to it, and then bring forth beautiful examples of infancy and then watch them grow, really a spiritual growth more than a physical. Do you see that? And so it is, I am convinced, that much of the prenatal trouble of the world is caused by the ignorance of people, as much as it is in the child's experience of itself. Some may be due to its own karma, but I am sure that most of it is due to the ignorance of those responsible for it. Because most of the children of the world are just born as animals. You see, and that leaves them with nothing but bread alone to sustain them instead of every word. And you will see the miracle difference in animals, in plants, as well as in children, when they are fed something more than just bread alone. And then you'll see that much of that experience is avoided. Just like in the homes of metaphysicians, there is not near the amount of child diseases than in the non-metaphysical home. As a matter of fact, in the States, its average is only 20%. Any school record will show you that a Christian Science child only has 20% of the absences of a non-Christian Science child. We don't have any records for Unity or for Infinite Way. And in the same way, I'm sure even doctors will admit that although they do occasionally have a patient in a Christian Science home or a metaphysical home or something of that kind, that doesn't amount to 20% of what they get in a non-metaphysical home. Do you see that? Showing that actually we are changing the destiny of this world. Even if not 100%, 80%. And so it will be that we will change the whole history of these prenatal influence cases, accident at birth cases, and all the rest of these things that the world is suffering from, but which it's only suffering from in its material ignorance, or in its ignorance of spiritual values.
Do you mind saying a word about instantaneous death, accidents?
Same thing. Same thing. People prepare for that. In one way or another, they are either building a pathway to it in their mind somehow, or they are doing other things that account for it. For instance, their own carelessness toward life, which involves them in accidents. Do you see what I mean? Or indifference and ignorance and willfulness and all of these things that show a disregard for life. Well, a disregard for life is a welcoming of death, no matter how you look at it. It is the same with wars. It isn't that our children want to go out and get killed, but it is that when we go into uniform, we give ourselves up and we say, well, I'm a statistic. In other words, I have 4 chances out of 10 of coming home. I'm 6/10 dead. Every soldier knows that when he goes into uniform. Do you see that? He's virtually giving himself up to just a little luck. Maybe he'll come home, but he's giving himself up just before he even starts out. And you'll find also that there are exceptions. That sometimes a man goes into uniform and says, here, I wasn't born to be slaughtered. I'm coming home. And he comes home. He makes his determination, his oneness with life, you see, makes his agreement with life and then fulfills it.
May I ask you about the handling of evil? What do you teach?
About the handling of evil. Now, you recognize, of course, that all evil is impersonal. It's never personal. Evil is never brought about because of a conscious willing of evil, even when it is consciously willed. Even when it isn't. Because even the person who's consciously willing it is the victim of an impersonal evil that is handling him at the moment. It is like a person who is stealing. You say, oh, but that's conscious theft. He's lifting out his hand to steal. Oh, no. He is hating it and fearing it more than the fellow who's going to be robbed. He is doing it in his ignorance of where else to get supply. He is doing it because of an imposed will that has said there is no other way, or this is the best way, or the quickest way, or so forth and so on. In other words, everyone is unconsciously a victim of evil, not consciously. Now then, evil is impersonal. And That must be very evident in the case of infectious diseases or contagious diseases, that nobody is actually willing it or wanting it or desiring it. They merely become victims of it. Now, the handling of evil in the infinite way is this wise. Since God is the only power, evil can only exist as a claim of a power, an appearance of a power apart from God. But it cannot exist as power. Once you understand that whether it is willful malpractice, or whether it is infection or contagion or propaganda or the action of the human mind or tyranny or any other form of mental or physical error, that it has inherently no power, you have handled evil. If you have tried to protect yourself from it, you've made yourself a victim of it, because you've acknowledged two powers. Now the question is, which one is the greatest power? Do you see that? Now, the infinite way student is very careful to handle evil every day. Not by ignoring it, because that's the best way to become a victim of it, but by consciously acknowledging, I and the Father are one, and that truth is the only power on earth as it is in heaven. Or, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Why? Because it isn't evil, whether it's person, place, or thing. Do you see? The infinite way teaches us that whatever happens to us must happen through our consciousness. For instance, if any good comes to you through being in this class, there is only one thing responsible for it. You consciously brought yourself here. Nobody else did it. Nobody sent for you. You came. You had to make the decision to come. You had to see the worthwhileness of coming. You had to give up the time and the effort. You had to arrange your affairs. You had to battle through some nasty weather. Do you see how then whatever good comes to you was a direct action of your consciousness? And if you had just said, you are this way at home, nothing good would happen to you here. See that? All right. So the infinite way also says, to avoid evil must also be an activity of your consciousness. You consciously must accept God as the only power in your experience. You must consciously pray without ceasing. You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. The Master never said the truth will make you free. He said, ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Ye shall know the truth. Do you see that? See how consciously you must do something? As consciously as bringing yourself here, so must you consciously awaken in the morning and say, God, this is your day. This is your day. I am your body. Use me. I am your servant. Use me. Thou art the only presence and the power in me and through me. Thou art the only power and presence that functions me. And besides thee, God, there are no powers. I shall not fear what mortal man can do to me. I shall not fear what circumstance or condition can do to me, for there is but one power, and I am it. Do you see that? Now, our secret is this. Not that we know some truth that's going to be a power over evil like the disciples thought. Not that we have some great master somewhere who has power over evil. No. There is no evil. God's in his heavens, all's well with the world. But that must be a conscious knowing on your part. That's why I say meditate 20 times a day. It only takes a minute or 2 or 3 at a time. That's why I say you've got to know the truth. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. Acknowledge him in all thy ways. Do you see that? Whether you go out of this door, you have no right to go out unless you consciously know the presence has gone before you. Do you see that? Otherwise, you are leaving it to Lady Luck as to what greets you on the other side of the door. Don't forget that if you were to ask an insurance representative, they would tell you that we aren't human beings, we are statistics. 4 out of 10 of us will fall in the bathtub, and 2 out of 10 of us will slip on the ice, and 6 out of 8 of us will catch a cold. And do you see that? And if we get in an automobile 100 times, we'll have 18 accidents. That's what they'll tell you in the insurance company. They know exactly what is going to happen to you every one of the 24 hours of the day, and the fact that they make money proves they're right.
But not with infinite way students.
Huh?
They're not right with infinite
They
way.
can't be right with any student of truth. They can't be right with any student of truth. But they will be proportionately right as you neglect knowing the truth. Do you see that? Because whatever happens to you, life or death, comes to you through your own consciousness. You open the way for it. Do you accept 2 powers or 1 power? On that point determines your whole experience. If you go back to theology and have a God that's going to heal sin or disease, that's what will happen to you. If you stay in truth and acknowledge my name is written in heaven, I and my Father are one. God is the Father and God is the Son. God constitutes my being. God is the very life of me. God is the very body of me. Do you see that? Don't be afraid to take hold of your body. Don't be ashamed of this body. Male body, female body. Don't you care about that? It's God's body. Do you see? And love it. Love it. Love it. God gave it to you as an instrument, and you got to love it as much as you love your automobile. And if you don't love your automobile and take care of it, you won't have a very good one very long. Do you see that? But the more you love it, the more you will take it in possession and care for it. And so it is with this. You got to love this. You got to love this all the time and say, why, God gave this to me as an instrument for God's purpose on earth. And as long as he wants it to function on earth, it's going to function. And I'm going to be in control of it. Okay? I, God. I'm going to let God function this body. Not germs, not beliefs, not medical theories. I, every day, I am going to realize, Father, this is the temple of the living God. This is your temple functioning. See that? And as you do that consciously, with the realization, nothing from without a man can enter to defile a lie, make a lie. It isn't what you eat. It has nothing to do with whether you eat meat or you don't eat meat. Has nothing to do with what goes into the system. It has to do with what comes out of your state of consciousness. What do you accept in consciousness? It is true that the more you develop spiritually, the finer, the more refined will become your appetite. And the less grosser foods you will eat, and the more of the finer foods. Do you see that? But that is the same in every walk of life. The more spiritual you become, the less sensual you become, the less sexual you become, the less greedy you become, the less gross in many ways. Do you see that? The more spiritual, the more refined your inner instincts become. Do you see what I mean? And someday you're all going to learn this very same thing, that there's nothing wrong with sex except the gross animality which attaches itself to it. Do you see that? Love is a beautiful thing. Love, even male and female love, is beautiful if it's high enough in spirit. But the lower you drag it down into animality, the more vicious, vile, and disgusting it becomes. Do you see that? But the more you lift it up, the less of animality there is to the relationship, and the more joy in each other's companionship. Do you see that? And that's what people in love really learn in this work, that it's the most beautiful, beautiful relationship. The whole of life is beautiful when it's no longer tainted by grossness. And that comes in proportion as we let this thing be occupied, day and night in prayer, with recognizing God as our being, God as our companion, God as wife or husband or friend or child. Recognize God to constitute our relationships. Do you see? And so it is. The handling of evil must be done, but it must be done not as if it were an evil to be overcome, but in the realization of, thank you, Father, it's a nothingness. It's a no power. I shall not fear what mortal man can do to me. I shall not fear. I won't put my faith in princes. I won't put my faith in even good people. I'll always keep my faith in God. And then I will cooperate with good people. Do you see the difference? But never will I put myself at their mercy. Never, never. One of our men, of whom you may have heard over here, Father Divine, the colored preacher in the States, he is probably, I wouldn't be surprised that he might be one of the greatest metaphysicians in America. But he has said that even when you go to a practitioner, be careful not to put all your faith in them, because they may just let you down at the wrong time. And I saw that happen in a Christian Science article one time written by an editor who said that Christian Science prevents untimely death. And so if he were a practitioner, I suppose he would be deciding when it's time for you and me to die. I don't know what age he would have set, you see. But the point is, never wholly release yourself to man whose breath is in his nostril, even when you ask him for help. Always reserve one little place where you're saying, well, wait a minute, Father, no matter what he's doing, I and my Father are one just the same. Do you see that? And the same way, even when accepting support from a husband or a wife, or even when accepting checks from a trust fund or an inheritance, always remember, Father, I'm not wholly trusting this. Remember, thou art my supply. Do you see that? Never get yourself in a mental frame of mind where you really believe your husband is your support, or your patient, or your student, or your church, or your investments. Do you see? Because you're leaving yourself open for an awfully bad slap. See that? No matter how good you've got it, always look one step behind and say, Father, if all this were wiped out, I still would have thee. And in having thee, I would have all this too. See that? Now, those who have God have all. And that is why it has been said, if you had God and everything in the world, you would have no more than if you just had God. Because God constitutes everything that's in the world. How are you going to separate them? See that? So it is. Yes, the Infinite Way student sometimes complains to me that I talk too much about error, but don't you believe it. Sometimes in the States, the truth centers, when they have invited me to talk, will say, now, Mr. Goldsmith, we know how you feel about error, but you don't have to mention that in our center, because our students know that there is no error. I said, then why do they want to come and hear me? Why don't they stay home and enjoy the day? Okay? But it isn't true, you see. There isn't anybody in this world knows all about error, or they wouldn't be suffering from it.
How would you treat excessive smoking?
I don't treat any particular... I don't look on it. I have no criticism for it. I have no judgment, no condemnation. It has nothing to do with me. All I am interested in is God contact. Now, if a person smokes too much and says to me, would you give me help? My only answer is certainly. But if I were to say smoking is an evil, I would have prevented its healing. Do you see that? Because I would be accepting a power apart from God. So my answer is never that it's right and never that it's wrong. My answer is I will give you help, which means I will make my God contact the same as if it were cancer or consumption. You see? And the healing will take place, sometimes, though, in proportion to the tenacity to which the person's holding on to it. Even the person...
They don't want to let it go.
Oh, no, you have no right to stop them then. You see, you must always recognize the rights of individuals. Now, we are metaphysicians. And would you like someone to come along and put a bottle of medicine under your nose when you're sick and say you must take it? Well, we have no right to put a prayer under their nose. Do you see that? We have no right to do that at all. I would no more take advantage of a relative or friend by interfering in their personal life. If they want to go to hell, it may be the very step necessary to saving them. Do you see that? I have no way of knowing. On the other hand, if you were to say to me, as happens all the time with students, my husband is an alcoholic, will you help? Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Not that I care about his demonstration, but your demonstration. You do not have to be made the victim of an alcoholic. Do you see that? You are entitled, as a student, to gain your freedom from it. Now, I don't know how your husband's going to get freedom from it. He may jump off a bridge, or he may get a divorce. That I don't know. But you've asked for help, and you are going to get help. Do you see that? What way it's going to come out, I have no way of knowing, because some people will not give up that which is bothering them, and if they won't, they're apt to lose their home, their fortune, their everything. And who is to say that it isn't a good idea? Because I have told this story about a Christian Science teacher and lecturer, and I can tell it because he has told it in 100 testimonies, that he was a businessman, a social drinker in New York, and it got the best of him. And he drank too heavily, lost his business, and then his wife turned him out of the house. She felt she had had enough. And he became a hobo in New York City. And one night, cold, wintry, snowy night, he was walking down Central Park West without even an overcoat on, freezing, and drunk. And he saw these electric lights, and it happened to be First Church of Christ Scientist in New York City. There was a lecture going on that night, and he stumbled into the lobby. And a very, very Christian head usher walked him inside, put him on the back seat, and let him go to sleep. And which was really compassion. But during the sleep, this man was healed of his alcoholism. When he woke up, he couldn't drink anymore. And 6 years later, he was the first reader in that church. And then he went on to become a teacher, and then he became a lecturer. And eventually he was reconciled with his wife. So that, who is to say that being put out of his home or getting down in the gutter wasn't his ultimate salvation? And that man I was personally acquainted with, and at 97 years of age, he passed on in his 97th year. Okay? Now, and not through old age and not through disease. He was on the lecture platform right through his 96th year and just went to sleep, and that was it. After a weird beginning, you see. So that it isn't up to us to judge that a condition's evil, just because to our eyes it would seem so. But when it comes to interfering in the lives of others, no. Be assured of this, they have as much right to medicine as we have to mind.
You mentioned outbreak of polio in the States, and you realized the Christ on the instant dropped. Was that an indirect claim through? Well, now, this question refers to the incident of the polio drive in California. Now, as a matter of fact, this wasn't a claim at all. This was
I mean, so far as I was concerned, it was an epidemic.
Yes, I was not interested in
Yes,
indirect
no,
consent.
yes, it was an epidemic, and what brought it to my attention was this: that every day, in fact, every hour of every day, the drive was on the air for relief funds for polio, and I made a very grave blunder by accepting that all of this propaganda was just increasing the polio. And according to figures it was. The rate of polio nearly doubled during that drive. And I accepted the fact that it was this propaganda and radio stuff that was doing it. When the realization came to me that I was causing more of it than they were, that I was accepting the human mind and medical theory as power, and I was accepting propaganda as power. I was accepting these radio broadcasts as power, and they weren't power at all. So I said, now you can go ahead and drive and talk and propagandize, do anything you want. Now we've got it in its right place. It's a belief, it's not power. And the case has dropped to 1 a day. You see? But there was the fact that I was doing what most of us do in metaphysics, blaming the human mind and giving it power. See that? No, just turn it off. Do you see that?
Yes.
We are always, aren't we, claiming that the human mind is doing something, but it isn't. We are permitting the human mind to be a power.
But I was wondering if it was people who were actually turning to them for help that made you live.
Oh,
Was that spoken?
I wouldn't think so. I would think that it was part of my normal function. What is my normal function? My normal function is to live in the realization of one power, isn't it? That's the only reason you might say I'm on Earth. To be a stabilizing influence, to know that there's a... But I was